Antonio Daniels is a former NBA guard. He's an NBA champion. That should be number one. He's a host on SiriusXM NBA Radio. He calls Pelicans games right now. Antonio, it's Maggie and Perloff. Thanks for the time today.
No, thank you guys for having me. How are you?
Good. Sorry we had to go through all of that, but and keep you on hold. But we wanted to have you on for a few reasons. First, it's always great to talk with you. But secondly, you played against a lot of with a lot of the people who are on this list. So one of the controversial things of top 25 athletes since the year 2000 is we put Tim Duncan at 16, but we left off Shaquille O'Neal. You actually played against these guys and played with Duncan. What do you think?
Okay, so here's my question. When you say the top athletes of all time, what I'm looking for is the criteria for an athlete. Are we talking about pure physical athletic ability? Are we talking about the resume, accomplishment? What goes into the conversation of an athlete?
Yes, and yes.
But this is a little more resume than athleticism because they're very different kinds of athleticism. Can you compare the athleticism of a golfer to an NBA two-guard?
Correct.
But the golfers still go high on the list.
Okay, so then the question is, why is Shaquille O'Neal not on that list if this is about resume?
Right. So here was the debate about Shaq, and we had a very robust debate about this, really. It was like 30 minutes. So the reason why this is the best athlete since the year 2000, and while Shaq may have had his peak maybe in the early 2000s when he won multiple finals MVPs, Duncan went further into the 2000s at more of a peak. Winning a championship in 2014 that we know obviously Kawhi Leonard was the 2014, right?
Yes,
was the MVP, the finals MVP, but still like Shaq was long done, and let's be honest, the last couple of years of Shaq weren't, even something that he would probably be bragging about. So we thought Duncan went further into the 2000s as a better player.
Oh, okay. See, my issue wasn't really with Shaq being ahead of Tim Duncan or Tim Duncan being ahead of Shaq. It's maybe some of the other people that are on that list. And I don't know the entire list.
Yeah.
Just the fact that Shaq is excluded, that feels a little different. Because when we think about resume, everything as far as criteria is concerned, resume, cachet, personality, dominance, athleticism, Shaq kind of embodies every one of them. So, it's a little different for Shaquille O'Neal to be not on that list at all.
Well, if we were going to put cachet in there, I mean, part of it, though, is that
Duncan probably might not have been.
Yeah, Duncan would have. But Shaq also Shaq's broadcasting success also adds to that and his entrepreneurial success. So I think some of that's a little unfair because he's been larger than life since he played as well.
Right.
Well,
that's true. And that's an interesting discussion. That's a very, very interesting discussion to have. Because we're obviously not just talking about basketball. And one thing that I'm not good at is talking about things that I'm not knowledgeable on. I'm not knowledgeable on some of the other sports. I know Shaun White. I know who that is, obviously. But to say I am well-versed in X Games, no, that's not true.
Well, that's what we were going to ask you about next.
Right, we're talking about Simone Biles and what she was able to accomplish as far as women's gymnastics is concerned. I don't know what goes into all that. Peyton Manning, I know he wasn't the best of athletes. I know that. He wasn't the best of athletes, but when you start to put on some of the other things, as far as overall accomplishments are concerned, that obviously changes and steers the conversation in a different direction.
Okay, let's go back to basketball. We're talking with the NBA champion, Antonio Daniels, who now calls games for the Pelicans, SiriusXM NBA Radio, does it all. Okay, let's give you a hypothetical because I don't want to reveal anyone who's in the top 10, but let's just say for argument's sake that we put Steph Curry over Kobe Bryant. Would you have a problem with that?
No, I wouldn't. No, not really. No, and the reason I wouldn't, because both of those guys, I believe, have 5 championships, correct?
Well, Curry has 4, and Kobe has 5.
Then, I guess I would have an issue with it.
Okay.
If that's the case, if you put, then I guess I would have an issue with it because I understand what we're saying. But if we look at the totality of everything, Kobe Bryant being drafted in, 96?
Yep.
And he didn't really hit his overall peak until the 2000s.
Yes.
Late 90s and then 2000s all the way through. Steph Curry was drafted in the 2000s and didn't get off to the best start. Obviously, not getting off to the best start is one of the reasons that the Golden State Warriors were able to put that roster together to sort of create that dynasty because of his injury-riddled beginning of his NBA season. So, I definitely would have an issue with Steph Curry being ahead of Kobe Bryant.
Antonio, we were talking about the different kind of athleticism and greatness. I'm curious, who is the most athletic player you played against in the NBA, and is it different than the greatest player you played against?
Oh, no question about it. Just like I tell people all the time, the most talented player I played with is not the best player I played with. The best player I played with was Tim Duncan. The most talented guy that I played with was Gilbert Arenas. Just as far as pure talent was concerned. His ability to do everything. He was Steph Curry before Steph Curry, except he was bigger, stronger, and a little bit more athletic. But the best player I played with was Tim Duncan. The most athletic player I played against, that's a lot of guys that you can throw into that conversation because athleticism doesn't exactly translate to success.
Right, and we have the draft tomorrow night. Obviously, you hear so much about athleticism. Like, what do you look at, when you want to add a player? What's more important to you? What's upstairs or sort of the athleticism?
Well, see, and we talked about this on our SiriusXM show today. What's so difficult to me to evaluate about the draft is there are so many immeasurables. There's a lot that they can measure. They can measure your wingspan, your height, your vertical leap, how many times you can bench 135 pounds, the cone drill, how fast you can run the 40. But there are so many things that they can't measure because they haven't put you in that situation yet. They can't measure your work ethic. That's why you see so many guys outplay their expectations. If you had to go back and redo drafts, Steph Curry would probably go first. Why didn't he go first? Because there were certain intangibles that he had that they couldn't measure. Michael Jordan didn't go first. Kobe Bryant didn't go first. It's a lot of guys that are on that list, a lot of guys and possibly women that are on that list that didn't go first overall in the draft. But they end up outplaying their expectation because I feel like there are so many things within a draft process that you can't measure. You have no idea. That's why now when you look at guys, it was once seen as a bad thing to draft a guy that was went 3 to 4 years of college. That was seen as like an awful thing. Like, oh my gosh, don't draft that guy. He's old.
Yeah.
So something has to be wrong with him. Now, because you have guys like Jose Alvarado, Desmond Bain, Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, you have guys that are drafted that are playing well because they're coming in and they're more experienced, mature, and seasoned. Now it's making it a little bit easier to draft, quote-unquote, older players directly out of college. So it's a lot of immeasurable – there's a lot of things that you can't really measure that I think end up paying the difference when guys get to that next level.
Antonio Daniels is obviously an NBA champion, host on SiriusXM NBA Radio, calls Pelican games, is joining us now here on Maggie and Perloff. Last one for me, Antonio, and thanks again for carving out time for us today. We know you're busy. So you call Pelicans games. How shocked were you to even see Zion's name in any kind of trade rumors?
Well, I'm going to be honest with you guys. Seeing anybody's name in trade rumors doesn't shock me anymore. Man, we got to think of some of the guys throughout the course of history that have been traded. Shaquille O'Neal was traded. That's the most dominant guy in history. Wilt Chamberlain, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Oscar Robertson. Some of these guys were traded. So if these guys can be traded, if these guys can be moved, I am no longer surprised by anything that I see or any name that I see in trade rumors.
Wow. Last one for me, Victor Wembanyama. If you got Pickens, if there was a switch and you had to cover this dude, how do you stop a 7'5" guy?
Man, this is a toughie. And there's a lot of questions surrounding Wemby.
Yeah.
What position is San Antonio going to play him at? You know, just because he's 7'5" doesn't mean that they're going to put him at the center spot. You know, we've never seen anything like him because the guys in past history that we've seen at this size have never been this fluid. You know, the Sean Bradleys, the Taco Falls, the Mark Eatons, these sort of guys, they've never been able to move like this. They've never handled the ball like Kevin Durant with a high shot release. So for me, if I'm trying to guard someone like Victor Wembanyama, I'm getting someone a little bit, obviously, smaller because you aren't going to find someone his size, but to try and get up under him and be a little more physical with him. That's easier said than done because then he's so skilled, similar to Kevin Durant, you can put him on the box, throw it up to him, and he can actually just turn and face. You give it to him in his sweet spot, and he's in range. And he has the ability to just let it go from where he's at. The closest thing that we've seen to Victor Wembanyama is Bobo.
Yeah.
And that's saying a lot because Bobo's really talented, but I think Victor Wembanyama is going to be something special in this league.
You know, Antonio, sorry, follow up on that just because you played for Greg Popovich, and obviously the Spurs have the number one pick, Wembanyama. They've been, you know, I don't think that's not a mystery. I have a theory that Popovich is going to bring him along really slowly. Like, I'm wondering if he's even going to play 50 games next year. Am I right or wrong on that theory?
I agree. And I asked my co-host today, how many games do you think we'll see Victor Wembanyama in the Summer League? Because Summer League has become a microcosm of the NBA. You know, we saw Paolo Banchero last year play, 2 games, I believe it was? We saw Zion play a half. So what you're seeing now is guys that are drafted really high, and there's a lot of expectation for them to try and take that franchise to the next level. What teams are doing is taking the low management approach in Summer League. So I don't expect to see Victor Wembanyama very much during the Summer League, and I'm with you guys. During the regular season, I would be shocked. I mean, eyes wide open if Victor Wembanyama played between 60 and 65 games.
Antonio, can't tell you how much we appreciate this. Antonio Daniels, got to check him out, SiriusXM NBA Radio. He's an NBA champion, and he is a color analyst for the New Orleans Pelicans. We'll see what happens with the Pels, Antonio, but thank you.